Dad, you can let go now.
Bye, son.
A perfect climax doesn't need to be a huge fight. There's more to it. The most important thing is whether you, the audience, feel the payoff. And when that climax flops, it takes the entire movie down with it. So why does the climax of Kung Fu Panda 2 feel like a masterpiece, while those of something like the Emoji Movie or Hotel Transylvania 3 are forgettable and even annoying? Seriously, how do you not waste a climax? To waste a climax, filmmakers often misunderstand what it even is. This is the main reason why many movies fail to deliver something satisfying. So check this out. In Kung Fu Panda 2, there was this scene where Po stands alone on a broken piece of wood, floating in the middle of the ocean. Shen has just shot a huge cannonball that destroyed almost everything in its path. And now the city is burning, and Shifu and Po's friends are injured and scattered in the water. Shen's fleet is moving forward, and Po has no way to stop it. The big fat panda is not even close enough to Shen to land a punch. It is an extremely hopeless situation. There are no jokes this time, no noise, just water, fire, and a panda who looks completely lost.
As you wish.
This is crazy because earlier in the fight, everything had looked hopeful for the heroes. When Tigress led the Furious Five against Shen, it felt like their plan would work. But when Shen shoots Po with a cannon, everything shifted. The Furious Five, fearing that the panda was dead, lose their bite and are soon captured. With that, Shen sails into China with his fleet and with the Furious Five chained to one of his ships. However, Po returned and rescued his friends, and the audience could breathe a sigh of relief there. It got even better when Master Shifu arrived with other masters, and it appeared that they would win the fight. But then Shen fires another cannon, and Po is left alone, floating on that piece of wood. And right there, you feel stuck with Po. Most movies that fail at this think the climax is just the biggest or the loudest scene, or even the scene with the most stuff happening at once. But that is not what you just felt with the panda. That moment worked because it felt like the story had reached a breaking point. Everything the hero learned, feared, and struggled with was being tested all at once. And that is what a real climax is. A climax is the moment where the story stops building and starts demanding answers. It's where the hero can no longer avoid the hard things, and the movie has finally pushed them into a corner, as if to say, dude, you have to deal with this now. That is why Po's moment hits so hard. His problem was never just Shen, but the pain he carried from his past. The fear, the anger, the confusion about who he really was. Inner peace sounded nice earlier in the movie, but now it's the only thing standing between him and total failure. So when Po finally uses that calm focus to stop the cannonballs, it feels earned. You remember every step that led him there. And that's it. A climax is the final destination of a journey that started way back at the beginning. It's the massive stop sign at the end of that road, where all the training finally gets tested. Now, you might think that a climax must involve a battle, right? But the truth is, it doesn't always have to be a fight like with Po and Shen. Take Finding Nemo, for example. The movie builds from worry to loss and then to hope. Every scene pushes Marlin to loosen his grip, but he never fully does. Then the fishing net scene hits, and everything he feared and avoided rises at once. He has finally seen his son, and now he's gonna lose him again? No way he's going to let Nemo risk his life to save Dory, right? But Marlin soon realizes that he must trust Nemo now or lose him for good.
Nemo? Nemo?
What about something like Sing? The climax is the final spectacular talent show where every singing character, such as Rosita and Johnny, finally steps onto that stage and overcomes their struggles, proving they have what it takes. These examples demonstrate that the climax is always about the highest tension, but that tension can be a fight, a choice, or a song, as long as it ultimately determines the final outcome of the story. But understanding what a climax means is one thing. Knowing how not to waste it is a totally different issue. This is why this next part is crucial. The movie The Mitchells vs. the Machines has an epic climax. But why do you think that's the case? It starts as a goofy road trip story with loud jokes, weird characters, and colorful edits. Everything is simply messy. But underneath all that noise, the movie tells us clearly that this family does not know how to show the love they absolutely have for one another. The protagonist, Katie, feels unseen, especially by her father, Rick, who is too old school to give a damn about his daughter's dreams as a filmmaker. As for Katie's mother, Linda, she's stretched thin trying to glue everything together. Then there's Katie's brother Aaron, a sweet but weird kid obsessed with dinosaurs. However, everything becomes worse when the robots finally take control. But somehow, the Mitchells manage to work together with their differences and find themselves attempting to save the world. This leads them to Silicon Valley, where they're disguised as robots. Unfortunately, Rick and Linda are soon captured and locked away. They eventually escape, but Linda is captured again. She stays cool and even tells her husband to go on without her. She wants him to focus on the mission and the kids. It is a sacrifice that is necessary. However, we get something surprising when Aaron is carried past her in one of those prison pods. He's screaming and calling for his mom. This is the moment the movie has been aiming at the entire time, and it doesn't announce itself. No one tells you that this is part of the climax, but you just know. You know that this is one of the moments the story has been building up to. Because as Linda sees her son being dragged away, helpless, something in her snaps. The robots just made it personal to her. That threat to Aaron is what finally makes her explode with power. So she slams two robots into the ground with her bare hands. She rips through metal plating, tears out a robot core, and holds it above her head like a trophy before declaring,
"I am Linda Mitchell, mother of two. Look upon me in fear!"
And as you watch it happen, something feels right about it. You're not confused, and you're not asking, where did this come from? Instead, you love it. This has been a movie about a family that loves each other to death, even though they have their differences. So if a climax was ever going to happen, it would have to be something personal pushing that payoff. Linda was basically fighting for her little boy, and that intensity is what we remember and what makes her sudden power-up feel so earned. But it gets better as the climax gets even more personal with Katie and Rick. Live Your Life by T.I. and Rihanna was a special song Katie and her dad bonded with when she was a kid. Except that as she got older, she pulled away and thought the song was lame. That song represents their broken bond. So when they finally repair that connection in the final fight, they use that very same song as the weapon to overpower the machines. The music made for a great soundtrack, but it's also the key to their victory because it represents the unique personal connection that Pal cannot understand or defeat. The Mitchells only win because they choose to be their weird, flawed selves together, and that makes their victory feel deeply earned and satisfying. But what happens when you miss that personal connection? Well, you end up with a climax that feels like a bunch of random things happening on screen, like in the Emoji Movie. This movie's biggest problem is that the stakes are too weak and abstract. The climax involves Gene, the meh emoji, and his friends confronting the evil Smiler. The ultimate threat is that the antivirus bot will delete meh. But who cares? It's hard to feel scared for a bunch of digital faces you don't even like. The final action sees Jailbreak uploading a piece of code that somehow crashes the antivirus bot into Smiler, breaking her teeth and defeating her.
Oh no! What did you do to my beautiful ball? Oh, my dude!
Then Gene makes the right faces and the boy owner finally sends the right emoji to his crush. The audience reaction is basically, yay, the phone wasn't deleted, I guess? The stakes were always just to save the digital city, which isn't personal for us, the viewers. No one we loved was ever in true agonizing danger, especially not when they're freaking emojis that can be re-downloaded. So basically the real victory for the hero has to be about dealing with a personal threat that we, the audience, give a damn about. It's that simple. But perhaps stakes alone are not enough. The next mistake filmmakers make is just as common, and it ruins climaxes even when the emotion is there. The climax of Avatar: The Last Airbender was iconic because of the personal stakes, but there was also something else that many people must have missed. The truth is, there are a lot of climaxes going on for different characters in Avatar, but when you look at each fight or encounter, you notice a similar pattern. To know what that pattern is, let's look at the fights between Zuko and Azula and Aang and Fire Lord Ozai. When the action starts, the immediate feeling is hope. Zuko and Azula meet for their Agni Kai, and Zuko is doing extremely well. He's fighting with clear focus after having mastered his firebending. When he successfully knocks Azula down, you, the audience, are thinking, Zuko finally did it, he's going to win. Meanwhile, on the other part of the climax, Aang is also matching Ozai blow for blow, using all four elements to counter the Fire Lord's fury. The fight is difficult, yet the good guys are holding their ground. But then the villains escalate, and the feeling changes to fear. Zuko taunts Azula, and she snaps, targeting Katara with lightning. This leads Zuko to throw himself in the way to protect her. In an instant, the great champion is down, critically wounded. And you back home? Well, you're punched in the gut. Your hope is crushed, replaced by panic and dread. And now you immediately shift your focus to Katara, thinking, how can she possibly win now? At the exact same time, over at Aang's battle, Ozai escalates as well. Aang soon got back up and was holding his ground again until he was hit by lightning. Luckily, he was able to catch it, but then he shows mercy and redirects the lightning away from Ozai, unwilling to kill him. Then Ozai immediately blasts Aang while he's vulnerable. At this point, the heroes are defeated on both fronts, and now the feeling is desperation. Katara is left alone, driven away from any water source by Azula's relentless assault. She's running rather than fighting, and you feel that crushing tension. She's the last one left in that fight, and has to be smarter than Azula somehow. At the same time, Aang's Earth Shield is completely overwhelmed by Ozai's charged fire. And eventually, he's slammed against a rough stone wall. This is where the story pays off everything that has been built. For Katara, she finds the grate and the water underneath. She then lures Azula into the trap and binds her with the chains. You feel an enormous rush of relief and satisfaction here. Zuko is saved, and a major villain is defeated. At the exact same moment, Aang's defeat triggers his spiritual breakthrough. The blow to his body unblocks his chakra, and the Avatar state emerges. The feeling immediately shifts from desperation to awe and power. Aang, possessed by the past avatars, subdues Ozai effortlessly. This leads to Aang's final test, where he finds the strength to stop himself from delivering the killing blow. He rejects the easy, violent fix and takes Ozai's bending instead. The climax demanded that Aang evolve beyond his own power, rewarding the audience with a victory that was completely unique to his character, because it perfectly explains how not to waste a climax by structuring it progressively. A climax needs to feel like a complete mini-story of its own. It has to have a beginning where the heroes are winning, or at least matching up, a middle where the enemy escalates the threat to something even more dreadful, and an ending where the hero wins using an earned counter. If you skip that progression, you end up with a climax that feels confusing and disjointed, like in Raya and the Last Dragon. The whole movie tells Raya she must learn to trust people to defeat the evil Droon monsters. But in the final moments, the climax becomes a stop-and-start conflict based on a giant moral choice. Raya and her friends are trying to assemble the magical dragon gem fragments, but they keep fighting over who should hold them. Then, when the climax finally hits, the solution feels unearned. All the main characters choose to immediately turn themselves to stone by handing over their gem pieces to Namari.
Please.
After what she's done?
We'll never trust her.
Exactly, and no one should have trusted her because she didn't earn it. That single choice ruined everything and made it seem like the creators only cared about passing a message rather than creating something sensible. But why exactly is this climax a waste? Well, because Raya spent the movie becoming an amazing warrior and strategist, but the climax didn't demand she use those skills to win. She simply had to make a choice, and the script rewarded that choice with a magical victory. A powerful climax must progress logically, forcing the hero to change, fight, and use every skill they've learned to win. Unfortunately, you can have all the personal stakes and perfect structure in the world, but if the final battle lacks these next pieces, you lose the audience. When you watch the climax of Hotel Transylvania 3, you cringe because the whole thing turns into a silly music fight. The movie is about Dracula finding love with Erica, who is secretly the great-granddaughter of his sworn enemy, Van Helsing. To make it more interesting, Van Helsing talks about retrieving the ultimate weapon to finally kill all monsters. Now, that sounds like a tense climax, right? But what is this instrument of destruction? It's a music sheet for an evil song. Van Helsing shows up at the party, grabs the DJ booth, and starts blasting a spooky song that controls a giant kraken.
Everybody out now!
The kraken was friendly at first, but now it's angry and smashing everything in reach. It should feel scary or dangerous, or at least a little intense. Instead, it's just laughable. Even when Erica dives in to save Dracula, nothing feels like it carries weight. And then out of nowhere, Johnny pulls out a small DJ kit, plays random happy songs, and suddenly the kraken calms down like a baby hearing a lullaby. Van Helsing and Johnny go back and forth with their choice of song, trying to outdo each other, but there's nothing tense about the whole exchange. There's no one who would, for once, feel like things wouldn't end well for the monsters. We all knew that it was only a matter of time before Johnny played something that defeated Van Helsing, and that was exactly what happened when the Macarena started. Everybody dances, even Van Helsing. The magic music sheet starts dancing too. Then it rips itself into tiny pieces because it wanted to join the fun. By the end, Van Helsing apologizes. Everyone forgives everyone, and the cruise ends with hugs and refunds. If you think about it for a second, you might ask yourself, what was I supposed to feel here? Was it danger, fear, or suspense? The movie sets up a giant sea creature, a mad scientist, a trapped crowd, and a mystery weapon, but none of those things creates real tension. Everything plays out like a stretched-out joke. The danger never grows, and nothing pushes the characters into a moment where they might break. Here's the trick about tension. You can make your climax silly or funny or upbeat, but the story still needs real pressure. It needs a moment where the hero could lose, and the loss should matter. Hotel Transylvania 3 skips this step. However, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse didn't. The climax is the whole chaotic battle at the Super Collider, and every single moment within that fight is earned and meaningful. The villain, Kingpin, is trying to destroy realities, but for Miles Morales, the danger is deeply personal. He has to stop the man who killed his Uncle Aaron. The crushing weight of that loss is the price he paid just to get to the final fight. The tension becomes unbearable when Miles, who has been too scared to use his powers, finally makes the leap of faith.
Like, what's up, danger?
However, the highest point of tension happens during the Collider fight when Miles is nearly beaten by Kingpin, who is massive and unstoppable. At that time, his friends had left him for their various dimensions. He's completely alone, and Kingpin blocks every punch he throws. You can tell that the odds are definitely not in Miles' favor. But the tension reaches its highest when Kingpin gives him the same blow that killed the original Spider-Man of Miles' universe. You can see here that the key difference is what the hero has to risk. In Hotel Transylvania 3, the tension is silly, and the price of failure is a dance-off. In Into the Spider-Verse, the tension is deep, and the price of failure is the death of Miles and the emotional devastation of his family. And that's it. A climax has to make the audience believe the hero will actually lose something important forever. If your hero is going to win, they have to risk more than just a bad DJ set. They must risk an important relationship, a life, or the very thing the hero wants most. And this brings us to yet another important part of the climax. The victory must be earned. This means the payoff must be the final result of everything the hero has done. This concept requires the victory to complete the character arc, build on everything that came before, answer all the story's core questions, and fundamentally change the status quo of the hero's world. When Miles uses the Venom Blast to eventually defeat Kingpin, he achieves all these points. He starts as a kid struggling to live up to the Spider-Man mantle, unable to use his unique powers, and terrified to make a mistake. But then, his final desperate act is him basically saying, "I'm not doing it like them, I'm doing it like me." This moment of self-acceptance, the choice to use the specific power he earned through his struggle, is the final perfect piece of his arc. He stops trying to be Peter Parker and finally becomes Miles Morales. His victory also builds on everything that came before. It forces him to master the two elements that defined his failures: the Venom Blast and his invisibility. He only wins because he learned to fully trust his powers. The win is a direct consequence of every lesson, every failure, and every moment of training throughout the movie. But perhaps most importantly, his victory fundamentally changes the status quo. The original Peter Parker is gone, but the Collider has successfully torn a hole in the multiverse, setting the events for the sequel. So when a climax is personal, progressive, has real tension, and the victory is fully earned, you get a movie that lasts forever. But while following these rules prevents you from wasting a climax, one other thing that might save your climax is your hero. Unfortunately, the heroes these days have been watered down. Check out this video here to know those heroes and those that are still done right.